Montana, where we are in month 900, I'm pretty sure, of it being cold and snowy. Raquel, how are you, and where are you joining us from?
I'm great, thank you. And I'm in Erie, Colorado, basically Denver, Boulder area. So we've had a lot of snow too.
Absolutely. Michael, how about yourself?
Hey, I'm joining from Indianapolis, Indiana, and we've had spring-like weather trying to happen here. So I'm excited. It's getting warmer.
Yes, I have been obsessively checking our forecast. I think it's almost going to be 50 degrees next week, so
Shorts weather.
thrilled. It's going to be t-shirts. Maybe I'll go suntanning. I don't know. All right. Okay. Well, we are just past the hour here, so I'm officially going to get us started. Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Amy Arno, and I am the lead event specialist on the XYPN marketing team. Today, I am thrilled to host this webinar, Automate, Optimize, Maximize, How to Increase Productivity in Your Firm, with two of our XYPN members, Raquel Hinman and Michael Reynolds. I do want to point out just a few housekeeping items. On the right, the top tab that you see is the chat function, and that is where we will be dropping any resources that we mention. Below that is the Q&A module, so if you do have any questions for us throughout the session, please be sure to submit them there. I just want to be very clear, not in the chat. We're not going to be checking there, so check on the second tab. That's where Q&A goes. And then just a heads up, we do have some pre-submitted questions as well as those that will be asked live. So we're going to start with those pre-submitted ones to make sure we hit some of those, and then we'll move on to the live questions. At the end of the webinar, please click back to the lobby on the top left of your screen. You will see a feedback survey pop up when you exit, and we would love for you to take a moment to complete that. And then please also submit any ideas for topics that you would like to see us address in the future. Also, be sure to register for next month's free event, How to Manage Compliance as an RIA Firm Owner, from initial registration to SEC registration. That's going to be with XYPN Managing Director of Compliance Travis Johnson and XYPN member Corey Beal. And that event will be held on April 5th, and you can find the link to register in the chat. Last thing for today, it's never too early to start thinking about attending XYPN Live. Obviously, I'm biased, but I do think it's the best conference in the industry, and I hope that you will join us in Atlanta, September 19th through the 21st. Okay, well, I think that's it for me. Thank you to our guests for their patience as I got through that. I would now love to have our panelists introduce themselves. Raquel, can you please introduce yourself and your firm and share a bit about your experience with optimizing productivity?
Sure. So again, my name is Raquel Hinman, and I have a firm, Hinman Financial Planning, located in Erie, Colorado, just outside Boulder. And gosh, I'll say I've been with XY pretty much since the beginning. I joined right at the end of 2014, right when our first thing started. And my firm is now in my 9th year. And in terms of what I've done in terms of optimizing my practice, I haven't actually automated a ton of stuff. One of the big things I've done is I've outsourced a lot of the investment management to First Ascent, and I think they do a great job. That's probably one of the number one things that I've done.
Lovely. Thank you. Michael, how about yourself?
Sure. Michael Reynolds here. I get from Indianapolis, Indiana. My firm is Elevation Financial. I focus a lot on socially responsible / ESG investing. I also work with a lot of business owners, and I go really deep into sort of the therapeutic side of money as well as cash flow support, and it's really helping people with their behaviors around money as well. So as far as automation, so I am a career changer. My firm has been launched since March of 2019. I was in the industry before that, but launched my firm independently in 2019. But before that, I owned a digital marketing agency. So my background is in tech and marketing and Chinese systems and all the stuff that goes with that for about 23 years before I got into this field. So got a lot of background in using technology and processes to make a business more efficient and provide better service. So I'm excited to chat today.
Perfect. Well, how about you kick us off, Michael, with one of our first questions. How did you know that you needed to look at efficiency and productivity in your firm?
How did I know? Well, it just seemed seemed obvious because, business is, revenue in and expenses out and time spent, and the less time you can spend on certain things, the more you're able to deliver more, I guess, more frequent and better service, and be able to deliver more on that. And that, of course, leads to higher revenue and, again, I think, better service. So, owning a business in a different career for 23 years kind of opened my eyes to, the difference it can make to improve efficiency and to increase your ability to be profitable, which in turn, I think, again, going back to the client, which is most important, helps you serve the client better. So ultimately, everything we talk about when it comes to efficiency, yeah, making more money is great, but it's really also about how can you create a sustainable firm with a model that is good for your clients. And if I'm stressed out and working too hard and burnt out and not making any money, that's not good for my clients. But if I have a balanced life, if I am being well paid, if I feel good about the work I'm doing, then that's good for my clients.
That's perfect. Raquel, how about you? Was there a specific aha moment or pain point that you were feeling that had you look at this?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is the same as what Michael just said. I think on my side, it's, when you start noticing that you're getting really busy and you don't have enough time, then I think it's really important to take a look at, what can you afford to do? And, what are the tasks you like to do? What are the tasks you don't like to do? What do you do well? What do you procrastinate on or never quite get around to? And looking at your processes and figuring out what can you do differently or how can you outsource? I did hire an assistant in year 2 of my firm. So really early on, I found somebody who could work with me part-time just to do a lot of the administrative stuff. I do have a part-time paraplanner as well, and he's just been amazing and wonderful. So, yeah.
Great. So where do you start then with productivity? Do you look at your tech stack, or where did you start, Raquel, when you went on this journey?
Well, it's funny because everything has changed so much since I originally started my firm, and there's so much more sort of, I guess, opportunities and services and things like that. But so really, when I first started, it was like I just need to hire an assistant to outsource all the kind of little things that aren't the highest and best use of my time. And so that's really where I started. But I do think, and I got some great advice at one point that if you really look at your process from start to finish, or whatever's not working well, and you break it down into all the little steps, and then you look at each one of those little steps, and is this something I can outsource? Is it, can I outsource it easily? And, how much is it going to cost me, and kind of go from there. But I think that's a really great way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Michael, where did you start? Did you start with your tech stack?
Somewhat. I'm pretty tech forward and tech interested and tech savvy, I guess. So I immediately go to like, oh, what's the shiny tech? And that's always fun. But really, I think the best way to start and the way I really got my processes set up is to just start documenting things, especially if you find yourself doing things more than once, maybe twice. Everything like that is a candidate for a system, a process. And so you can just open up a document and just kind of start to notice if you're in client meetings, when clients sign the agreement and you start to kind of set things up, and even delivering a financial plan. Those are all things you do over and over and over. Also, your marketing activities, you do things every week over and over and over if you have a marketing system running. So those are all candidates that can be for things that can be automated and, more importantly, just systematized. They don't need to be automated necessarily, but to be turned into a process. So, a checklist for everything. And then that's where you start, because there's plenty of tech that can hold the checklist for you and manage it. But I would start with a simple document and say, okay, when my client signs the agreement, what are the 10 steps that I take to get them from agreement to first meeting? What do I have to do in the background? Put all those things in a document, step by step, and then you can turn that into a workflow in Wealthbox, for example, or a checklist in Asana, or whatever tool you're using. The tool doesn't matter. The process is what matters.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there any resources that you used to like double check that you weren't missing something? I'm sure like Kitsis has something out there. Was there a book or a podcast or anything that you listened to when you were first working on those processes?
Yeah, so the Kitsis service calendar, or I think it's the XY or Kitsis, maybe together, created the service calendar in multiple formats and different times I've seen, which is really helpful. So, that service calendar I saw that outlines, hey, here's what kind of sample things you can do after a year. That was helpful. Some of the software products also have great, built-in kind of recommendations too. Like, I use the XY tech stack. XY has a great platform and a great set of benefits for the tech stack we use, Wealthbox, Right Capital, for example. And, they have some built-in suggestions on how to do things also. So I think that does help to a point, but honestly, I've also noticed that everyone likes to do things a little bit differently. For example, the XY workflows that are built into Wealthbox. I wish I could delete them all because that's not what I do. And like you can't just take a workflow and just like apply it to someone and say they're going to use it, because everyone's going to do things a little bit differently, which is great. And so for me, what helps me the most is just get a basic skeleton in place and then start using it. And then every time I use it, at least for a while, I would say, you know what, I missed a step. I actually do this. Let me add that step. And next time I do it, add this. And so, 10 iterations later and 10 client meetings later is really pretty solid because I've filled in the gaps by using it in practice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Raquel, how about for you? Was there any resources that you utilized as you were building your processes?
Yeah, and just to add on to what Michael was saying too, I think it's really important that you pay attention to who you are as a person and who your clients are, because the clients are one firm and one set of clients and one person are going to be very, very different from others. So, I'm a person who actually like fights process with every ounce of my being. I just am not a process person. And I know it's so incredibly important. And so, one of the things I've done is my assistant and my paraplanner are both like incredibly process oriented. And so they help keep me on track, and they know that that's part of their job. But one of the interesting things like workflow, we use workflows all the time, and we have gone from having pretty general workflows and using some of the XY workflows to we went to these really, really detailed workflows. And then I found out, like, just for me, I couldn't do that. I just couldn't handle that kind of stuff. So we ended up making them a little bit more general again. And definitely playing with stuff and figuring out what works for you. Another one is, what are your clients like? So I know a lot of people like to automate the data gathering process, for example, but with my clients, my specialty tends to be clients who are more like 50 to 70 years old, and their portfolios are typically 1 to 10 million. And they're not people who, they're busy and they've got stuff going on. And so for me to send them the link from eMoney or one of those and say, okay, now you connect everything and you do all this work before I ever meet with you, that doesn't work for my clients. And,
Yeah.
One of the things we talked about is, instead of putting boulders in their path, removing the boulders. So we still, a lot of times we'll collect all the documents, just ask people to upload them. And then we do all that data entry and we do that stuff, which is more work. But so again, I think in all that is just paying attention to the processes and what's going to work for you and your firm and your clients.
Yeah.
And then otherwise, yeah, what we're doing, I think it's really important to, when you're looking at processes, it's got to, or any kind of automation, it's either got to make your life easier, somehow save money, or really enhance the client experience. I think it's easy to get caught up in too much of that kind of stuff. And then it's like, okay, but does this really actually do anybody any good?
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of times what I've done is I've tried to eliminate the noise, if nothing else.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this then, Raquel, on that note. So for a new advisor that's just launching their firm and hasn't and is maybe currently working on developing their niche, and what would be a way that they could then understand how to build a workflow for that niche? Should they, if they haven't, maybe they're switching from a broker dealer, haven't worked with these folks before, should they do some interviews? I mean, before they do it in practice, right? There's sort of like groundwork things that they can do to start building workflows that are their target demographic friendly.
So my first thought is join XY. So I do think that XY just has great. I mean, that's part of what I do when I first started my firm. It's like I joined XY between the tech, between the tech stack and the community and all the educational resources. I think that XY is really, honestly, one of the best places to go. And I wasn't asked to say that, but it really is true. And all the education, and again, there are just some reasons. I feel like XY is on top of everything when it comes to technology and processes and the best way to do business. So, I think that's a great place to start, just to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything you want to add, Michael, about building target demographic friendly workflows?
Well, mainly I wanted to also echo the endorsement of XY. Again, we were not, in fact, we were told you don't have to mention XY at all if you don't want to, but I am going to mention XY because I would not be at this point without XY. So joining XY is well worth the money. So anyone who's not a member, please consider joining. It's phenomenal. And as far as target demographic, I would just kind of go along with what Raquel said. Kind of figure out what's unique to your market. Some things are going to be generalized. Everyone has an agreement to sign and, a planning system to set up. But, if you're working with a certain type of target market that has unique needs, then you're going to probably ask for different documentation. So if you work with a lot of business owners, you might ask for a P&L from their business. Or if you're working with veterinarians, you might ask for things related to running a veterinarian business that relates to their income. So there's different things that are going to come up. And again, I think getting in and just trying out your workflows and using them in practice is the best way to optimize them.
Great. That's super helpful. So Michael, where do you think someone should start with automation? Do you have like an easy sort of automation 101 answer for that?
Oh, that could go so many different directions. So as far as where to start, I would start simple, and I would start with what's built in and not look too far out for some magic solution. What I find is that I think most people, myself included, but a lot of us, we use the software products to about 20 to 30%. And my goal is to try to get to 80-90% utilization before I'm looking for something else. I talk to a lot of people that, they use Wealthbox and they don't even really use any workflows. They barely use tasks. It's just kind of a glorified phone book for them. It's like just a contact management tool. And then they're looking at other tools to do automations. And I'm like, well, hey, wait, let's look at what you have now. So I would try to keep your tech stack small at first and utilize the support resources from the software, utilize XY, utilize anyone that you can to say, how do I go as far as I can and build out processes and automations within the tools I already have? Because I guarantee you're not using it to its full potential.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like does Wealthbox, we'll just use them because they're part of XY's tech stack. So do they offer courses? Do you have like a salesperson that can help you? I guess, what does that look like actually in practice?
They have training videos.
Okay.
Yeah, in fact, I just released a new library of training videos. I'll admit I haven't watched them. I just kind of tinker and figured it out myself. But there are a lot of good, I have looked at them and they do appear to kind of cover a lot of different topics. So that's one thing you could do.
Yeah. So maybe for folks that have this as a goal, setting a couple hours a week aside that's dedicated to this on your calendar, right? Just to make yourself do it. Because I know it's easy to say, like, I'm going to get better at Wealthbox, but then you get busy doing your regular work. So making concrete goals around that for sure. So Raquel, you said you maybe not huge into automation. Do you have an area where you started? Or we could also talk about your the hiring that you've done.
Yeah, so it's funny as you talk about automation. I think that I'm not very automated, but then when it comes to Wealthbox, I use tasks and workflows all day long. So I think sometimes I kind of forget that that's really automation, but it's very true. And I think along with automation, there's also outsourcing. So again, one of the things that I realized pretty early on is that I can do investment management, but I don't enjoy it. And so where possible, I got to the point where I started looking for an outsourced investment management solution. And I ended up going with First Ascent. Their pricing worked really well for my clients and what I'm doing. And that's something that, sometimes, especially as you get bigger, it becomes a bigger and bigger expense. But when I look at where I spend my time, and especially over the last year with just tax loss processing and some of those kinds of things, I really appreciated having them. And it was just something that was like one thing I didn't have to worry about. And I still do have, I have some clients that I manage and I have to do their money, but they're so great and they can handle legacy positions and all these things that come with complex clients who already have money, and which isn't always typical for an XY person starting out, but I think they're just a great solution at a great price point. And so whether you use them or whether you use XYS or whether you use Betterment or something like that, the key is to look at what are the areas where you're either getting in your own way or it's taking up a lot of time or that you're not enjoying, and then what can you do to get those off your plate, whether it's automation, outsourcing, hiring, whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's part of your tech. What else do you use in your tech stack, Raquel? We have a question about like what technology tools are the most helpful, and did you compare them? I guess, do you utilize the XY's tech stack? Did you shop around? How did you get to what you have now?
Yeah, so I do utilize a lot of the tech stack. However, I was around before XY had a lot of the stuff. So, I use Wealthbox. I do have Orion personally through XY. Holistaplan is a game changer. That one is huge. I still use Money Guide Pro. How long in years before I even started my own firm. So I still use Money Guide Pro, but I think they're actually a great solution and to kind of get bad rap in some of our circles, but I think they're actually really good. Um, what else? I use tons of stuff. I'm QuickBooks. It's hard to even think, but I know I have a huge tech stack actually.
Have you pivoted at all since you started your firm? Have you added on, moved away from something? How has that changed as your firm has evolved?
Yeah, I have. I mean, I've certainly tried different things. I have tried using Rate Capital. I've tried using eMoney, and I never can quite get there. I do think your financial planning software is really important, and even sometimes you need more than one. Like I've looked at that before, just adding either the Rate Capital or the eMoney for clients who really truly need a lot more, like some of the raw conversion, things like that, a little bit more of the cash flow. But Money Guide Pro, again, works really well for what I do. I do look at getting away from Orion because I just think it's too much for me and more than I use, but I haven't ever pulled the trigger on that. I keep looking at Advise-On because I really like what they do. Um, but yeah, so I do think, I think you try new things all the time, and some stuff works, some stuff doesn't work. Your firm grows in different directions and kind of outgrow certain things. Specifics are hard for me to come up with.
No, I think that's great. How about for you, Michael?
Yeah, my core, I've got a pretty lengthy tech stack as well, but the core kind of 10 that I put on this slide from my presentation last year is Wealthbox, Right Capital, DocuSign, AdvicePay, Altruist for investment management, Holistaplan, as we mentioned, Calendly, Google Workspace, JotForm, and Fellow. One thing I've noticed that a lot of people don't know about yet is Fellow. Fellow.app is the website for it. It's $9 a month, and it is phenomenal. It's kind of game changing for me because it basically systematizes my meeting agendas. So, instead of, pulling out a Word document or a Google Doc or like typing up agendas every time, I have these templates. And for every meeting I have a pre-templated agenda already set up. So it syncs to my calendar. I look at the event, pop in the agenda, and then I can customize it. But I've got my preset agendas for everything. So for my my 3-meeting financial plan setup process has agendas for every single meeting. My annual service calendar, beginning, middle, end of year meetings, it's all just preset. So that saves me a ton of time. So Fellow has been a game-changing agenda tool for me. And then the others I think we all recognize. JotForm is one a lot of advisors recognize as well, but I use that pretty heavily for intake, for my investment questionnaire. So it's kind of my core tech stack there.
Great. And we did have a question about Redtail versus Advise-On. So Raquel, you said you've looked at Advise-On. Have either of you used either of those products? No,
I've not.
not.
No, I love them though. I really am interested in it.
Yeah. So I guess, sorry to this person that submitted that question, but I would say that all of these products out there in the world, they do offer like free consultations, so they can give you a demo and you can ask some questions and get in the weeds on there. So I think that would be a good opportunity just to get a feel for what Redtail and Advise-On look like. Also, we do a VIP Facebook group. It's a closed group, but it's open to members and non-members. You don't have to be fee only. There's just a few questions that you have to answer to be accepted to that group. And I think that there's probably plenty of folks in there that have used both Redtail and Advise-On that could help. And that group is free to join. So I think there's opportunities certainly to get some experience as you make that decision. We do have another question too on Schwab, trading models on Schwab. It says Advise-On integration, but I think we could just talk about integration in general. Michael, do you use Schwab for your custodian?
No, I'm still on TD for a minority of my accounts, but most of my accounts are on Altruist.
Okay, gotcha. So what does it look like for integration with your tech stack and the custodian? Do you have some, I guess, like high level tips and tricks for what makes it easier to manhandle those?
Yeah. So this is a slightly larger philosophical discussion, which we may or may not have, but I'm a big fan of not integrating too much. I've seen a lot of cases where advisors will try to integrate everything using like Zapier and just kind of like all this integration happens. And then the more you have integrations happening, two things happen. One, there's extra points of failure where if something breaks, like you kind of have to track it down. And then the other is you reduce the oversight into like what these things are doing. So for example, if you have an automation where, a contact gets added to your CRM, then it kicks off an email. Well, who knows if that email is appropriate every time? Maybe you want to customize it. So I like being able to oversee. So I don't get too carried away with integrations, but the integrations I do use with my custodian are the WealthBox integration and the Right Capital integration. So with WealthBox integration with Altruist, if I'm opening up account, I just basically say, search WealthBox for the contact, pulls all the info in, auto populates. That saves a ton of time. So I like that one. And then the Right Capital integration to pull in Altruist accounts is a must-have, obviously. So you got to have those accounts aggregated in. So those are really the only two integrations at the custodian level that I use right now. And then TDA also integrates with Right Capital, so that's fine too.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's great. Raquel, how about you? I know sounds like you use a third party for money management, but maybe you do some yourself as well. What custodian do you have, and any ideas for us on?
Yeah, I'm not a Schwab either. I'm at Shareholder Services Group, and I'll give them a plug too and say that they're amazing. Their customer service is wonderful, and I'm so happy to just be outside of all these custodial combinations that are happening lately. So in terms of integrations, though, I do SSG is integrated in my financial planning software. I also use Quanti actually as portfolio analytics, and they're integrated there, and it's great. Another one that I actually use, I do use BillFin for billing because I do have clients across multiple custodians. Shareholder Services Group is by far the primary. And BillFin is amazing too for being able to pull in all that stuff, and they're integrated with SSG, and they make my billing really, really easily.
Great. That's perfect. Let's talk about client deliverables. Do you have a way to make those faster, easier, friendlier? Raquel, how about for you? What are your ideas for client deliverables?
Yeah, I do not have one that's customized. And what I do use templates though. So just like what Michael said about templates, I have email templates, I have agenda templates, I have all sorts of templates. I do have a client summary template that I use. I have not taken the time to automate that. I keep looking at some of those cool one-page plans, and I really love them. Again, that gets down to what's really useful to the client, what's really giving them a better experience. Mm-hmm. And at this point, I'm still customizing that for my clients.
Great. Sounds good. How about you, Michael?
I try to keep the volume of deliverables to a minimum. I feel like as advisors, we get hung up sometimes on, how can I make this beautiful, shiny thing that I'm delivering all the time and looks super valuable? And in reality, our clients want conversations from us, and they want support, and they want help, and they don't need a 50-page PowerPoint every time, So I think deliverables are helpful, but when it comes to deliverables, I kind of stick with what's in the platforms like Right Capital. I do produce the one-page snapshot during some meetings to kind of give people a summary. I do deliver the plan as a PDF, but I'm quick to say, hey, this is out of date as of 1 minute ago because life changes. So here's the plan, but the real plan is, the fluidity of the platform itself, how we can kind of get in there and make changes and see changes. And the real plan is our strategy conversations together. That's the plan. The PDF is simply a snapshot in time. So I do use Right Capital's exports. I think they work pretty well. As far as other deliverables, I do my IPS in a Google Sheets document. I've got a simple template I use to kind of export that. It seems pretty clean. I don't try to over-engineer the IPS. I think the less specific it is, the safer and better it is for everybody. And then I wouldn't call these like deliverables. I guess they're deliverables because they deliver in form of email, but I have tons of email templates in WealthBox. So anything that I can just click a button and send the email as opposed to typing up new, I'm going to do. So, I have tons of deliverables in the form of email templates where I can just click a button and spit out stuff and go really quickly to keep in touch with my clients about the things that I need to communicate.
I'm sure the financial advisors on this call know, but what does IPS stand for? Because I do not know.
Investment Policy Statement. Sorry.
Okay, perfect. Just in case someone didn't know. Great. That's excellent. Okay, well, here's an interesting one for you, Michael. So this question is for Michael. I'm curious to know how you assist your clients with cash flow and cash flow management in a systemized way. Where do you begin with clients, the applications that you use, and where do you end in terms of deliverables?
Ooh, you're speaking my love language, budgeting and cash flow. So I use YNAB. I'm a big fan of YNAB. YNAB is short for You Need a Budget. It is one of the leading budgeting platforms out there. It's an app, it's a website, it's an all-in-one kind of SaaS solution. And I've been using it for years, and they've come out with a feature where you can invite people to the account. So they're able to invite me as the advisor to their account. So I have a program that I launched late last year that so far is going really well and really kind of been game changing for many I work with, in that, I help people set up a budget in the software, and then I meet with them on a weekly basis. And before we meet, I actually go and I categorize their transactions for them, kind of like bookkeeping, but on a personal budgeting level. So I do the bookkeeping for the budget, and I meet with them for 30 minutes a week. And, we go through the budget, we get categorizations correct if I missed anything, and we have conversations about their cash flow. And I found that is absolutely amazing when it comes to getting people to get on track with their cash flow, because the number one thing that trips people up with keeping up with the budget is the categorization. People usually don't have a problem setting up a budget like, oh, I spend this on this, and that's kind of fine. But, they let a few weeks go by and they just don't go categorize things. And suddenly they have 500 transactions they have to categorize, and they just give up, and they just don't get anywhere. So they delegate the categorization to me. I do that. Then I kind of provide that accountability and the conversation around it. And then that unlocks their potential to make their own decisions. They're saying, hey, I'm spending this much on X category and this much on X. I don't have to tell them that's out of whack. They look at it and they say for themselves, oh, wow, looks like we need to make a change here. So that's been phenomenal. And I'm in love with that area of service I'm able to offer people when it comes to cash flow.
Yeah, that's great. Say that one more time. You need a budget.
The software is called You Need a Budget, or people just call it YNAB for short, YNAB. It's pretty popular. It's got kind of a cult following. You could do the same thing with Mint or with Every Dollar or Monarch, you could do it with Right Capital, but Right Capital's budgeting tool is kind of not great. So I wouldn't probably recommend that. I think they're working on it, which I'm excited about. But for me, YNAB has been the best tool, especially for irregular cash flow. It's a really good tool for helping people kind of go with the flow, move things around in a fluid way, and kind of go with the way life happens.
Great. That's excellent. Raquel, how about for you? Do you have a cash flow management that you utilize?
Yeah, so we have a kind of a custom system that we've developed, but we tend to use Mint. I have some clients on YNAB too, and I think it's great. If they're the kind of clients who really like getting into that, it can be a little bit overwhelming for some people too. But we use Mint, and we kind of try to keep it to big categories. And I'll also say that I tend to refer out a lot to money coaches these days. So if somebody really cash is their primary issue, or they're coming to me for something like that, I'll tell them to go and meet with a money coach first, and then come with me after they've got some of that stuff figured out. And I think that's working really well. And I really like what some of the money coaches are doing in that space.
Yeah, because it's so behavioral, right? So that's
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Alyssa has asked, what about the budgeting tool in eMoney? Are either of you familiar with eMoney and its budgeting tool?
I don't use eMoney.
Raquel?
Yeah, so I actually have the eMoney dashboard that integrates in with MoneyGuide Pro. And so I have started incorporating that with some clients. And I'll say between Right Capital, MoneyGuide Pro, and eMoney, that is by far the best budgeting tool. And it works okay. I still like Mint, because in Mint you can really do a lot with. You can create custom categories, you can create tags, and you can, just do a lot of customization of the budgeting. So I still think Mint is better overall.
Okay, great. That's excellent. So is there anything that can't or should not be automated or optimized or templated, I guess? Like, is there still something that you spend a lot of time doing manually? Raquel, you want to kick us off with that?
Yeah, what popped in my head is conversations with clients and your actual advice. Michael, the meetings with clients, like that is where we provide our value. Clients want to know we're there. And I think that a lot of people get so caught up in the automation that they can forget that clients are hiring us because we're real people. So,
yeah. But I guess on that note, how do you manage it then? Obviously, you have a lot of clients and probably a lot of emails and phone calls to manage. So how do you set up expectations then with clients in that framework so they're not, all of your time?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's because that's one of those things as a business owner that you never feel like you have right. So I feel like I'm constantly going back and revisiting how often should I be meeting with clients, what do I do if we're going to provide the best value. And At the end of the day, I think you meet with clients 1 to 2 times a year. You have various touch points. I guess one thing to be automated is a lot of just the basic education and communication. So I try to do my blogs are around that kind of stuff. It's the stuff that you can easily deliver information, just general information about retirement contributions or changes in charitable planning or things like that. Those are things that I feel like you can easily do. I think, at the end of the day, my time should be spent on these custom conversations with clients. So if that helps.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Michael, what do you think?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would also add that when I find myself doing custom work, it's usually for business owners. Like recently, I'm working with someone who, is digging into profitability for business and what are some areas to adjust and kind of digging into that. That's pretty custom stuff. That's a conversation, I guess.
Mhm.
And even talking about some growth strategy related to marketing. My background is marketing, so I'm kind of having fun digging into growth strategies for as well. So that's more customized stuff. And then I find myself making videos for clients a lot more lately. So if they ask a question or I'm working on something for them, I could say, hey, let's have a meeting and here's an agenda for it. Or I could make a 10-minute video walking them through the answer and explaining everything in detail I use Screencastify for that. People use Loom for the same thing. There's a lot of tools for that. That's been really helpful and really efficient and effective because I could send an email, but sometimes emails are hard to digest or explain with a lot of clarity, and it takes time. But making a video is often the next best thing to a conversation because it's you can talk through it, explain things, screen share. So I find myself making custom videos a lot, and that's been working really well.
Great, I love that. So in terms of your current technology and your processes, I feel like the landscape of this is constantly changing. There's always new stuff coming out. Like, how do you stay on top of like making sure what you're doing is like the best route, I guess? And do you have the best stuff? I guess, Michael, what do you think? Like, how do you stay on top of everything that exists in the world?
The advisor community,
Mhm.
honestly, I am super excited to be plugged into a ton of different communities. Obviously, I would start with XY. XY has the forums, the Facebook group, my mastermind group. Right there is a great resource for just kind of staying plugged in to what advisors are talking about. They'll drop tools and apps and recommendations. And hey, have you checked this out? And like, that's awesome. Um, and then I'm also in a couple other non-XY affiliated online kind of forums and groups through Slack and Discord, and some really great conversations there as well. So honestly, just being plugged into the community, I think, is absolutely critical. If there's one thing I could say, like, do this one thing. If you forget everything else, get plugged into communities of great advisors through XY and even beyond. That's been game changing.
And in the same vein, I guess, is there any checking in or feedback that you get from your clients of like, does this process work for you? Do you like it? I mean, I don't know how to even phrase that, but do you evaluate like the success with clients somehow to make sure that it's working for them?
Yes and no. I should be better about that. I've often thought I should do surveys or just ask them outright, like, "Hey, is this working for you?" And I don't do that often enough because, like, I'm super proud of my processes and I just don't think about it. I'm like, "Oh, it's awesome," but maybe it's not awesome. I don't know. So I need to ask more. But I do ask sometimes. Like, I do say, "Hey, we're using this particular tool. How's this working?" Especially with budgeting. I've been asking my clients that I'm working with budgeting on, like, "Hey, how's this feel? How do you feel about the work we're doing?" And that's been super positive feedback. Like, yeah, it's been, life changing for us. So I do get that feedback a little bit. So, yeah, I think conversations are where I usually have it. I'm not crazy about surveys because who wants to answer one more survey? Nobody,
Yeah.
like that, just one more thing in their inbox, they're not going to want to do. So yeah, that's kind of where I am with it.
Great. Raquel, how about for you? How do you keep on top of what's out there in the world, and are you asking your clients for feedback?
Yeah, I would say that, I do think that kind of being out there and your communities and things like that are important. But I will also say that I actually deliberately took a step back a couple years ago and said, I'm not adopting new technology or doing anything more. I felt like it was too much for me, too much for my clients. There's always the big shiny object syndrome. And so I actually purposely stepped away from that and said, I'm just not going to make any changes for, I don't know, I think it's about 2 years. And then this year now it's like, all right, I think this year I want to go back and read the entire tech stack and say what's working and what's not working. I've even been considering hiring a consultant to help me with that. So I think what I'm doing is maybe moving to more strategic analysis of all that. And, every year, and typically for me, it's in the summertime, because summertime is when a lot of my client activity really slows down.
Mhm.
I start to think about what's working and what's not working in my business. And I am moving to a more regular tech review, sort of on a automation or whatever you want, systems and processes, where it's more once every couple of years. But I think it's really easy to get caught up, like I said, in shiny bright objects. And, again, then is your attention being spent on really what's the best thing for your clients and that client experience?
Mhm. And so as you're making that evaluation then, Markel, like what questions are you asking yourself? Like, is it user friendly? Like, do I like this? Like, does it output a product that I like? I guess like kind of what are your like main checkpoints as you go through that?
So my number one thing is always, what is my experience? So is this something that's either going to allow me to have more time with my clients to enhance their experience? Is it something that's directly going to give them a better experience? But at the end of the day, everything we're doing should be about the client experience. So I always start with that. And then it gets to kind of, what are the pain points? Again, like, what is the stuff that I either hate, so I'm not doing, or I'm too busy to do? What are the things that I can outsource to my employees? What are the things that they can't do or hate doing? And so it's start with that and go from there with automating.
Great.
Sorry, my headphone just dropped out.
Oh, you're good. Okay, we do have a question from Ron, who asked, you both mentioned using separate cash flow budgeting tools, YNAB and Mint in YNAB. I'll get it right at some point here. In addition to financial planning software, does this mean you have the client set up account aggregation into two separate systems to achieve both deliverables? Michael, you want to weigh in on that for us?
Yes, but it's a little bit different than you might think. So all the aggregation for everything goes in Right Capital. Or in some cases, I should have mentioned, I also use Elements for some clients. So Right Capital or Elements is where like the main planning stuff happens. So let's say Right Capital, all accounts go in there, all credit cards, all investments, everything. But when I use YNAB, I encourage my clients to, well, I require this. The structure we do is only your main checking account goes into YNAB. Nothing else gets aggregated because YNAB is serving one purpose. And that one purpose is tracking cash flow in and cash flow out. So there will be budget items like, save into Roth IRA or pay off credit card or send a chunk of money each month to your emergency fund. Those accounts out there you're sending money into, they're not linked up in YNAB because they don't need to be. What we're looking at is cash flow in, cash flow out. And those buckets are handled over in Right Capital or elsewhere. So YNAB is sort of the clearinghouse for the cash flow. So we don't aggregate everything in YNAB. We just aggregate the one account that is your operating account. And if they have, a bunch of different accounts, we organize that first so they end up with one main operating account.
So like their credit card, they might have all their like different categories of expenses, but they're paying off their credit card out of the one checking account, right? Where like everything's coming in and coming out.
Well, this is where I get a little controversial. This is probably an unpopular opinion, but if someone is working with me on budgeting for this delegated process, I require that they don't use credit cards for the time we're doing it. Because I know everyone's head's exploding right now, but
shot me in my heart. All my rewards points.
Everyone loves their points. Oh, do not get me started. I will try to keep this short. Climbing on my soapbox. Here's the thing: when someone is at the point where they need someone to coach them and help them and have that delegated service to get their cash flow on track, using credit cards at the same time is going to be counterproductive, and that they need to just stop the credit cards, because usually it's because they're overusing credit cards, their debt is out of control. Like there's a lot of things happening that we need to just turn off the credit cards, at least temporarily. So I do require that. And also part of it is I am convinced there's a lot of supporting data that supports this, that when people use credit cards, they spend more money. They actually think they're coming out ahead with rewards and points, but the points actually trick people into spending more money. We have a psychological behavior difference when we're spending credit card money because it's a detachment from the spending and the paying for it. So all that to say, I'm convinced that when you stop using credit cards, you actually save money despite the points. So we don't use credit cards when we're doing this. It's all debit card, cash flow, checking account, in and out.
Gotcha.
Everyone's head's exploding, I know, but trust me, it works.
Raquel, how about you? What does it look like to integrate Mint with your financial planning software?
Yeah, so at the end of the day, if my clients are doing the cash flow and they're doing they are integrating through two tools, and sometimes I feel like you just have to do that because at the end of the day, I'm trying to use the best tools for my clients. And I've never really had a lot of pushback on that, so it hasn't been a big issue. I agree so much with what Michael just said, and again, that's part of why I really started outsourcing some of that. If somebody needs heavy duty cash flow work, I send them to a money coach because for $500 or so, they can get a lot of really good coaching in that one area. And before they come in, they have to pay me much bigger fees. So,
gotcha. Super helpful. Let's see. So Faith then asked, you both mentioned using more than one financial planning software. Could you explain why you need more than one? Raquel, you want to kick us off there?
Yeah, so actually clarify what I'm doing is I've got eMoney. So eMoney has a dashboard, and you can actually just use their dashboard and overlay into the Money Guide. Because what Money Guide Pro doesn't have is a portal. And so that's a way that you can use the tools together, and they work really well. My financial planning software is Money Guide Pro. I have occasionally looked at other ones. Just it's more if people really have strong cash flow planning needs, then eMoney or Right Capital can be better. My clients don't necessarily like cash flow usually isn't the thing we're worrying about, and we can do the tax planning and holistic plan I think a lot better. So, but I think that it depends on what you're doing in terms of your practice. If you're working with lots of different types of clients, some financial planning software is better suited to one client than another, and I think that's a really important decision as you're starting a firm is to look at what are your clients going to do and what is actually the best software that's good for them.
Yeah. And you said portal, like a client-facing portal. So if I'm your client, like that's where I can log in, upload documents.
Yeah, a lot of people don't really know about that, but you can just get the eMoney dashboard. You don't have to buy the whole eMoney product. And again, it's kind of a complicated thing, but it's for people. Yeah, for people who are heavy Money Guide Pro users, it's a great way to sort of get the capabilities of both.
Great. It's good to know.
Yeah.
Michael, what about you with multiple financial planning softwares?
Yeah, so I use Right Capital and Elements, and I wouldn't consider Elements says this too. It's not really financial planning software; it's financial monitoring software. And so, the typical, the typical comprehensive financial planning engagement is going to be Right Capital. It's forecasting and a little more in depth. So all that kind of goes with the comprehensive model. But I found that I kept coming across clients that they just weren't a great fit. They're younger. Maybe their income isn't that high yet. Maybe their investments aren't that much yet. Maybe their complexity. Their life is pretty simple, and I kept having this nagging issue where okay, maybe they can pay, but we're plugging them into this thing and we're trying to pretend like what the electric bill is going to be in 30 years. And it's so abstract. Retirement is so abstract for someone who's like 25 and just starting a new job and single. Like it's just not. It doesn't make sense. And I was super resistant to Elements for a while. It's not a commercial for Elements, I promise. But, for like a year, I was like, oh, Elements, whatever. Their branding's over the top and they're still a Rubik's Cube. And I just had all this stuff against them. But I've really come around. Like I've really started to open my mind. And I did launch a service on Elements probably about 5 months ago now, 6 months ago. And I've really come around. I really see the value. And so I use Elements specifically for a segment of clients where they're younger, maybe income is not super high yet, investments aren't built up yet. They don't need a bunch of comprehensive financial planning. They need someone to coach them into saving more money, investing a little more, get their savings rate up, get their liquidity score higher, get their emergency fund built up, get the right insurance in place over time, and just kind of keep in touch and coach them into these good financial wellness habits. We don't really care what age they can retire yet because they don't care, right? They just need their savings rate high, their liquidity high, just kind of be pointed in the right direction and have someone to coach them. Eventually, they will be a comprehensive financial planning client because life will get more complex in many ways. So those are two different engagements, and that's why I use two different tools for that.
Gotcha. That's great.
So I like Elements. I would definitely recommend checking it out. It's not, like I said, no endorsement in official sense, just a happy user who's come around after being resistant for about a year.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. So what are some simple steps an advisor can take to increase productivity? So if you're just starting on this journey of thinking like, I think I can do things better, like what's one thing someone could walk away today and start doing? Like, would it be Calendly? Would it be looking at elements? Raquel, do you have one thing that someone can walk away from today and start doing?
Yeah, it's so funny because the first thing I thought of is looking at your whole firm and looking at what you're doing every day and like start, stop, continue. Like, what can you get rid of? What do you need to continue? What should you start doing? But yeah, there are some really basic things. Calendly is a good one. Again, Wealthbox or whatever your CRM system is, use the workflows and tasks and things like that. That's just easy. Set up templates. I mean, that is a super simple step too that doesn't really cost you a lot of money.
Yeah. And I know we just did one in membership about Calendly, but just for folks like outside of that. So how do you start with Calendly then? Does it integrate to the financial planning tool, to your CRM? Like how do you integrate it then into what you're currently doing?
Yeah, so it's funny, like I know it integrates with Google. That's what I know. So I use mainly. I mean, my Gmail is in Wealthbox too, but I always start with Gmail. So I'm like, well, it's on my Gmail calendar. It's Gmail. Again, my assistant helps set up a lot of that stuff for me. So. Yeah,
Love
it's
it.
just scheduling software. It's, all that stuff is. I'll say if I'm using it, it's because it's super intuitive. So Wealthbox, I don't think you need to watch a lot of tutorials. It's just really easy to set up and go. Same thing with Calendar.
Yep. Great. Michael, what do you think? What's one thing someone can walk away from and start doing right now?
I'll give you two. I think if you do these couple things, I think you can probably double your productivity right off the bat. These are really significant. So one is in Wealthbox. Let's say you're using a CRM, whether it's Wealthbox or something else. I'm going to say Wealthbox. So you start using the workflows for everything. And when I say everything, I mean like I have like two workflows that are main workflows. One for comprehensive, one for elements clients. But put together a workflow that defines your process from as soon as someone signs the agreement to kicking them into annual client service calendar. If you set up a workflow for that, you're going to go from, oh crap, someone signed, I've got to figure out how to service them now, to great, someone signed. I am confident I can serve them with no problems because the workflow tells me exactly what to do. That's going to be game changing. So use the workflows in your CRM, get them built, make it happen, and let that drive your service delivery, and that will be game changing. The second thing is we talked about Calendly. Raquel mentioned that as well. Use the automations in Calendly. Two that come to mind are use workflows in Calendly. So when you book a meeting in Calendly, you can have a workflow that kicks off an email, 7 days before, 24 hours before, and within that email that gets sent to the client, put all the stuff you want them to do. So, for example, if someone's booking a beginning of year review meeting, the Calendly email kicks off and just tells them, hey, please log into Right Capital, update your info. Hey, please fill out this form. Hey, please upload whatever, and just like whatever you want them to do, have it do it for you. So you're not having to think about it. It just automatically happens. And of course, have it connect to Zoom or Google Meet or whatever your video conferencing tool is. So it sets up the meeting for you already, just kind of makes that happen. When someone books a meeting with you, you should not have to do anything. It should just kind of do all the stuff for you. And then if you want to customize outreach, you can, but that should all be completely automated. Those two things, I think, alone will probably double your productivity if you're not doing them.
Great. That's awesome. Steve would like to know what tools you use for short client videos. I'm looking at Vidyard. I think Vidyard.
Vidyard.
Okay, so Michael, you had mentioned one that you used. You say that again, and then also have you looked at the one he's talking about?
Yes, I have. I currently use Screencastify, and I'll tell you why in a minute. The other ones, Vidyard is good. I use Vidyard in a different business. Vidyard works great. So if you see it and you like it, I think it works great, honestly. Loom is a very popular one as well. Vimeo, I think, has a tool. There's a few others. I use Screencastify. Meg Bartelt actually turned me on to it. She mentioned it in the forums once, and I looked into it after she mentioned it. And I like it because you can set up so it automatically saves your videos into Google Drive. So it kind of archives your videos for you. So I've always got a place where those videos are stored in my Drive file system already. Plus, it's really low cost. It's just got some nice tools. It's kind of made for educators, so I can like point to things, and my cursor can you can see where my cursor is going. I can do kind of fun editing. So it just seems like a nice low cost tool that is pleasant to use and that has that video archiving.
Great, perfect. Raquel, do you have one that you use?
No.
Not yet. No worries at all. Okay, let's see. So, Raquel, I guess a question for you
Mhm,
about outsourcing to help instead of like
mhm,
looking at, just straight up efficiency. How did you decide then specifically on what you wanted help with? I know you talked about going to like strengths and weaknesses,
mhm.
but did you have to find someone that like was it easy to find someone with all the experience you were looking for? Kind of what was that process like for you?
Yeah, so, one of the examples is First Ascent, and, for me, that was I was managing portfolios, but what I found is I was spending so much time and energy managing these portfolios, I felt there was a point where I was getting in my own way. So, at the end of the day, I decided I wanted this Chinese wall between me and the investment decisions I'm making for my clients, and, so I just started looking at different options. I think at the time it was, Betterment, Folio, XYIS, I think wasn't around, was barely getting started. And then there was First Ascent. And honestly, I know the founder of First Ascent. They're in
Mhm.
the Denver area. But then a big part of it was pricing. When you really look at these services and you look at, well, what is the pricing going to be now? And then where I think my firm's going to go and what it's going to grow to. They had a solution that was very cost effective for me, and they really agree philosophically with how I'm doing things, what I'm doing. So it worked out really well. And I think that's a decision that, I look long term, and to have that's a big piece that I do. And it's nice to be able to just outsource that. So
Yeah. So it
did that
sounds
answer
like
your
you have
question?
to define like what you're looking for, whether it's a like
Yeah.
price solution or like finding someone that shares your same values, like doing the things that
Hmm.
you don't want to do, like just defining some parameters about what you're looking for to like find the right solution.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the things I'm looking at doing this year, like I said, we're considering hiring a consultant, and there's and I can't tell you all the names, but there's somebody out there who's really good at process consulting, and then somebody out there who's like, if you've got your processes and you just want to know how to automate, you can hire them. And I am at a point where I'm thinking about hiring them. My firm is big enough now; the revenues are high enough that I can look at doing something like that. And I think there's other people who can do it and figure it out without me and this ton of time in that area.
Okay. That's excellent. Well, gosh, we're getting to the end here. So I want to ask before we go. So Raquel, you mentioned that you have a blog that's on your website that folks should check out.
Hmm.
Any okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. And then Michael, how about you? Blog, podcast, anything that where folks can find more great information from you?
Yeah, I do a weekly blog post and I do a podcast every week as well. And I'm pretty active on pretty much all the social networks out there as well. And on my website, I also have an advisors kind of resource page. So if you go to resources on my website and look for advisor resources, I do monthly office hours for advisors. So they're free. You can just pop in, ask me questions about anything that is in my wheelhouse, things like marketing, technology, processes. People ask me about altruist a lot, elements lately, because I've been kind of talking about that. So does anything I can help with, ESG investing. So that kind of stuff people come to ask me about. So you can register for that on that same page, as well as get access to some of my templates, et cetera. So
Perfect.
happy to help.
I'm going to tie that into this question we just got from Nancy. She said she's currently a member of the Garrett Planning Network, but she's considered XY over the years. What made you decide to go with the XY community, the tech stack, the finance advisor, etc.? So could she register for your event, Michael, and come ask you that question?
Yeah, sure. The
Okay,
answer is I
perfect.
don't really know because I don't know much about Garrett, so I can't really compare them.
Sure. But you could talk about your experience with
Yeah,
XY for sure.
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So, Nancy, I'm going to send you to Michael. I'm so sorry. Well, perfect. Well, this has been amazing. I'm feeling more productive. I hope everyone else got some great takeaways. Thank you so much, Michael and Raquel, for your time today.
Thank you,
Uh,
Amy.
yeah, if anyone would like to schedule a call with our sales team, they can answer questions about the network and just what it looks like to launch a firm, the basics of what we offer. We'll put a link to schedule that in the chat. And then just one more reminder to please click that back to the lobby, fill out a survey so we know how we did and what we can improve on, and then offer topics for next time. So that is all for us today. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a great rest of your day. See you, everybody.
Thanks.